All right, if it's Fridays, it's Real Fridays with Rick Rock, myself, retail mortgage banker, and Brock Cassidy, the chief revenue officer over at NewsZip, and then of course, what I believe to be one of the leading lawyers in the country, Jeremy Potter. Um, I'm traveling. Well, actually, let me do a better tee up. So, Real Fridays is a platform where we focus on really industry inside information, trends, and analysis on mortgage companies, and typically there's three of us. As I said, myself, Brock, and Jeremy. So long as Brock and Jeremy aren't late, I would say. Oh, it looks like.
I was backstage for a few minutes there. I'd say you were the one that was late. But
were you
good to see you,
were you parked? You were parked there for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't for some reason I didn't fire up my laptop. So I'm actually doing this. We're gonna add Jeremy to the stage too. That's great.
We're all here after all.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Well, I'm at the airport getting ready to go to the NBA in Las Vegas. I know NAM is happening right now, and then of course the NBA starts on Sunday. But I'm glad you guys could join us. I know the last thing Jeremy wanted to talk about was the NBA and what to expect. So what was what's on your agenda, Jeremy? What
can you hear me? Am I good on audio?
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
I don't understand the kerfuffle over 1099 MLOs versus
it's
W2
massive.
MLOs.
Yeah, it's massive.
I don't see it. So I understand that there are some slight variations, but I need to understand why it's such a big deal. I could tell you why I've underestimated it, I guess, or we could just go into why it's such a big deal and go from there. But
so let's start with why you think it. Like, obviously, you know the implications of it. So there are certain things that you're understanding about it. You're just not valuing its impact on the organization, right?
So in my mind, if an organization holds the license and only one organization can hold your license at a time, then that individual, whether 1099 or W2, sits in a position to deliver product and pricing for only one organization at a time. Or if they're a broker, they're finding the lender. But if they're a broker finding a lender, they still have that broker license with all the data and all the product and pricing. So if they're shopping around a loan, they're shopping around a loan to the different lenders. And if they're sending all their loans to a single lender, like they're 1099, but they're required exclusive to the lender that holds their license under a lender license, and that lender is closing it in their name. Either way, you have the data to see. It's not like you can skirt the LO comp, for instance, any more than you could by being a broker, setting up different agreements with different lenders for different compensation. So the individual comp doesn't change. Product and pricing is just as variable as a broker, whether you're W2 or 1099. So the consumer is getting the same variability from their broker regardless. So it really only sounds to me like it's a benefits, insurance, and HR thing for the organization, but not like a market competition problem, because you can still only put your license in one place, whether it's a broker or a lender, and you still have to choose where to send the loan if you're a broker, and you can manipulate that or not. And then if you're exclusive, product and pricing is in the data. It's not like you can manipulate that any more than somebody who's violating the law, in which case that's a separate bucket. You know what I mean? So to me, it just felt like whoever holds your license holds the responsibility for you regardless of how they pay you. And it's in the data what you originate or don't. And so the organization holding your license is on the hook regardless of whether you're 1099 or W2.
So it's not necessarily, all of that is obviously true, and it's not necessarily a licensing advantage as you mentioned. It's a substantial financial advantage for the loan officer, obviously, to be paid 1099 because you're not having taxes taken out, and you could theoretically not only be paid as a 1099, but then you can also be paid as an independent contractor, an LLC, a corporation, if you're being paid 1099, which is, there are massive and very substantial benefits from that, from a loan officer from that perspective. Just be able to do write-offs. I mean, that right there is a substantial advantage to the loan officer. I think that's more a question for the industry that requires a tremendous amount of clarity, regulatory clarity, right? Because clearly, lenders who take the position that it's 100% not compliant, like most mortgage banks would say, it's not a compliant setup,
right? Yeah,
and then there's a segment of the industry that embraces this as a path forward for loan officers. And you got to look at it. The last 24 months has been extremely competitive within the mortgage environment, as you know. And the largest, most rapidly, we've talked about this, the most rapidly growing segment of the marketplace are these non-delegated correspondent platforms that are plugged into Rocket or plugged into mostly UWM. And most of those organizations, not all, but a vast majority of those are 1099 shops. And the analysis I did in the last, this summer and the preceding 12 months, I looked at the amount of production gained and lost by mortgage companies, by mortgage entity, non-depository mortgage entities, so brokers and mortgage banks. And if you look at all the production that was gained and lost by cross country, by fairway, by guaranteed rate, by all the top independent mortgage banks, the net gain in production across the top 25, or at least of those doing $1 billion or more, okay, so there's about 83 of them. The question is, what was their net gain of production, right, for growth? And it was only about $1 billion a year in production. On the non-delegated correspondent side, those that are plugged into UWM, the net gain was about $5 billion in production. So
that's aggregate of those four groups.
Yeah, this was actually
those 83 top IMBs only.
Yeah, it's actually kind of an ingenious report that I pulled from this, and it actually enabled me to determine and to see.
Shout out Jeff Waltz coming on to demo. Is that next week?
Yeah, that's right. Next Friday.
Fridays. Yeah,
it's a good lead-in.
Good work, Brock. Nice segue. Nicely done.
So the point is, the question isn't whether or not it's not a big deal, because it's clearly having an impact, right? And I wouldn't underestimate. So there's a competitive advantage, which is part of the Loan Depot lawsuit with West Capital, is to say that not only is there anti-competition, there's conspiracy, there's all kinds of allegations being laid out, there's solicitation violations, but there's a fundamental question as to whether or not it's a unfair competitive advantage for those organizations who say you can hire hundreds of loan officers. I mean, there are these companies, like I'm a big fan of a company called Ease Mortgage in Troy, Michigan. They started 3 years ago. They have now 400 loan officers, and they'll do probably $1.4 billion, $1.5 billion this year. And I'm like, where are these guys? But they have. Where are these guys coming from? And they're pulling them from somewhere. And where are they pulling them from? Cross country, fairway, guaranteed rate. They're not pulling them from other mortgage brokers. They're pulling them from independent mortgage banks.
And you're saying these guys were maybe top producers or solid producers for an IMB, and now they're going 1099, but under the helm of a big brokerage, not starting their own.
Correct. And then I wouldn't even say there's definitely a trend of top producers doing this, but even on the low end, if you're a W-2 working for an independent mortgage bank and you're only doing 1 unit a month or 2 units a month, you have to stretch every commission dollar you possibly can. So if you have the opportunity to go 1099 to stretch that commission dollar so you can pay bills, it's a huge advantage for the lower end of the market to kind of have some life and vitality out of them.
Yeah, this is a great explanation, dude. That really helps, because I want to make sure I'm clear, and it sounds like I am, which is this is actually a structural issue between the types of organizations that compete and the outcome to that individual. It almost sounds to me like it has very little or nothing to do with what the consumer experiences. And that's where my head was, which I thought we were saying this lawsuit or this debate was something to do with getting a lower price on the rate sheet, getting a lower price into the hands of the consumer, getting a better deal that's shifting this volume. But it doesn't sound like that's true. It sounds like the end result to the consumer is relatively static. It's whether or not individuals have a better outcome based on their like tax situation or their state law situation in one of these two setups. And then that forces me to ask the question of like, who cares? As long as the consumer is getting a good deal and the competition of the price to the consumer is relatively the same. I know it's not going to be perfect. In other words, I'm sure there's some little tiny thing here and there which we could find, but ultimately, like, that's really interesting because that one loan a month person, that's the IMB's problem. Let's be clear. Like, that's not the consumer's problem. That's not the industry's problem. Like,
well, it's the loan officer's problem. I wouldn't say it's the IMB's problem. I would say it's the loan officer's problem.
They're keeping them on the rolls. They're keeping them on the deck. So they're using that 12 loans a year person.
Yeah, that's not loans a year person
to complain. They're using that person's cost to complain about this high producing 300 loan officer shop down the street. And all I'm saying is, like, hold on. It's not Ease Mortgage fault that you're keeping this person around for one loan a month. No offense to that person. They're, I'm sure, a wonderful originator, but like, what are we doing?
Over the past 18 months, a lot of loan officers that their stats look like that have been laid off by those IMBs. So can't exactly blame them.
It gives them a place.
Yeah.
It gives them a place to be, right?
Yeah.
And we all know the numbers. I mean, there's 199,000 licensed loan officers that did maybe in the non-depository side that did maybe one unit in the last 12 months, right? But if you look at those who did 12 units, it goes down to, I don't know, 90,000. And then if you look at those who did 24 units, 2 units a month, it goes down to maybe 70 or 80,000. So as you start, so there's 110, 120,000 loan officers that have their license that renewed, but they're not doing enough volume for them after taxes to be able to actually have any kind of net impact on their families or on their bills and their monthly expenses. So the opportunity to be able to do 1 unit a month, to do your $300,000 mortgage, get 150 basis points or 200 basis points of $6,000, right? To work for one of these non-delegated correspondent platforms, it's a huge sales advantage. Now, this is, in my view, it's a function of clarity, right? There's about 11 or so states that completely that prohibit these loan officers from going 1099. But there's a HUD question as to whether to do FHA, right?
They kind of messed with that rule a couple of years ago. It used to be clear, then it's made unclear.
So it's like, come on.
This will be a fun innovation question. This is why they both loved me and hated me at Rocket for questions like this. But like, what would be your reaction if we just said it's a game on? Everybody across the country can choose, and it's a business model decision.
I'd love it.
You do think it would be great?
Oh, okay. 100%. It'd be so much better. I think it'd be, look, independent mortgage banking, like the Mortgage Bankers Association, I presume, or, CHLA or any of these, might say that not having a W-2 employee might put the consumer at risk or something because they're not as vested or connected or committed to the consumer or the organization of which they represent. But I don't buy that because I feel like, because those organizations, if you're a licensed loan officer, you can only originate with one entity and you have to hang that license with one entity.
Yeah.
So I mean,
in order to challenge that, one of those groups would have to argue that the NMLS licensing system isn't rigorous enough or buttoned up enough. So you'd almost be forcing states and the federal government to say, if it is buttoned up enough, if those licenses are buttoned up enough, then that liability for that person's behavior hangs with that entity. Now, I could see an argument. I'm sure someone would make this argument. Well, a mortgage brokerage is pretty easy to like send into bankruptcy and then stand up another one, right? Shut the doors and stand up another one. But Brock, the thing I wanted to ask you is, we see this all the time in real estate and insurance. Almost every real estate agent, almost every insurance agent that I'm aware of is 1099. So like, what's different about real estate and insurance than mortgage? You have your license, you have your state ethics board, you have all that stuff. What's your take on if there's a difference?
Yeah, I was actually just going to say, in real estate, there's long been really, really blended models here. Real estate, I think there's just more like horse trading that goes on, where it's like, Under this sort of business, it looks like this. Under that sort of business, it looks like that. If it's your self-gen business that walked in the door, you can keep, the vast majority of the comp. If it's maybe 100% of the comp even, but if it came through one of my team channels that went through my ads that I, as the real estate broker or team leader or senior agent on the team, paid for, then you owe me 50% of the commission or 30% of the commission. If it came from a referral source like NewsZip, where you owe them 35% of the commission, then you owe your broker X amount of the commission. Like, I just think real estate agents got extremely comfortable with that deal making of, great, here's how it works for this funnel and this lead source. And here, and it doesn't seem like that's happened with loan officers. I mean, to this day, I still know a lot more about the real estate structures because that's what, at the end of the day, NewsZip's doing.
What you work. Yeah.
Estate deals, and so that's what I actually handle. But yeah, it's not uncommon at all to see that the broker fee change, the referral fee change, the lead gen marketing budget change, depending on source. If you look at these super teams, like some of the top Keller agents, or like Jason Mitchell's personal team, which is like a part of the Jason Mitchell group, like they've all these different structures: the self-gen business versus what came through the team business versus what came through the broker's brand. So I would encourage us all to get more creative and more open in the lending.
Yeah, I think the same way, which is like there are ways to structure LO comp compliantly where you can assign different levels of work. And
none of that's not compliant in real estate. None of that needs to be not compliant. It just needs to be governed somehow. Yeah.
This is the other reason I don't think that the MBA or these other organizations can challenge some structure like Rick, you were describing. And the reason is it would almost force them to be saying that real estate agents and insurance agents aren't doing what's right for the consumer, aren't doing what's good for the consumer. And so
it's not a valid argument
very hard
in
for
my view,
mortgage to say real estate's not doing it right. They work
the reality, I think there's many of us who believe that it was a mistake from the beginning necessarily to require W-2 status for loan officers. I mean, I think that was just a substantial overreach in reaction to the meltdown, to the 2008 market crash. With licensing enforcement, it solves that problem of a fiduciary responsibility that the loan officer has per their license to that respective organization, and then the organization's responsibility to do right for the consumer. So I mean, it would be a massive. It would, and the cost savings we would have from the standpoint of just moving everybody W or 1099 who want to be 1099 would be so substantial, and all the different litigations and different lawsuits that employees tend to levy against organizations, those would largely go away. So I had one public company say there's no way a mortgage company could be public by having 1099 loan officers, and I don't get that. I don't understand that comment, because there are other organizations that are public entities that employ quote unquote 1099 full-time work. I don't get it.
Top real estate brokerage, brokerage fits that description. State Farm, when we partnered with State Farm at Rocket, the hilarious thing that we had to do, thanks to the regulations, Rick, was they were 1099 with State Farm and part-time W-2 with Quicken. That's how that deal had to get done,
right?
Because of our rules versus their rules. Despite the fact that State Farm had all of the reputational risk and all of the brand underneath reputational risk, brand risk associated with them. And so I think you'd have to do the same thing for either brokerages or wholesale lenders, where, like, I'll give you an example. I was researching someone, no names mentioned, on LinkedIn, who had a different mortgage brokerage that lasted about a year for about 7 years in a row. So you have to ask yourself at that point, why is that state licensing that entity or that individual with a new company every year for 7 straight years? I don't think that's necessarily a reason not to have 1099. I just think, to your point, let's have licensing enforcement, and let's make lenders and employers responsible for who they do business with, and we'll be fine.
Well, I do think that there are substantial implications to that change. And I think mostly it would benefit companies, it would benefit loan officers, and it wouldn't have any negative impact on the consumer. So I think from a summary standpoint, I would say that it would be a massive benefit with
Yeah.
I don't want to
Do you
say
think it would
zero
have-
harm, but
There
zero
is there any
attributable harm.
Jeremy,
Is there any
before you take
benefits
this
to the
somewhere
consumer?
else, but before you take this somewhere else, Jeremy, there is another trend there though that I really don't like.
Yeah.
We'll go with one place where I'm like, don't want to be anti-innovation, but it just doesn't seem like the right fit to me, at least not yet. Maybe someone will do it right. Is these models where you're trying to get licensed for everything, where you're trying to, it's kind of the State Farm example with Rocket 8 years ago reminded me, right? Where it's insurance agents, mortgage, licensed professionals, and now there's a lot of people getting real estate licensed that are loan officers, and a lot of people getting loan officer licensed that are real estate agents. I don't know about that in a vacuum, but I do think it means there's going to be a lot of lower technical skill people on both sides. So we're going to have to really fill that in with the right, whether that's AI and rules engines, with the right guidance from the partner companies, things like that. Like we've taken a relatively strong stand on it at NewZip. Obviously, we sit right between loan officers and real estate agents. A lot of times they say, "Oh, I have that other license," or "I used to have that other license. Can you just can I do both sides?" And it's like, no, that's not our model. We don't have the pre-negotiated service level agreements. We don't have the pre-negotiated discounts. You don't fit the criteria of doing enough business or having good enough ratings on both sides. So I hate to be like the one that halts any kind of innovation there in my
no. I think that's the right point.
That's the part where I do get concerned about, I guess, like too much 1099.
Yeah, that's where this licensing regime that Rick was mentioning has to be strong, because we actually dealt with this up and down the East Coast. There's an IMB hiring real estate agents, and the way in which they were doing it was to go into the shop and say, you don't have to do anything. Just sign up as an MLO and we'll get you paid. Like that split of a senior loan officer and a junior loan officer. And in this case, the real estate agent would be the junior loan officer, to your point, Brock. So the best way to do commission splits in mortgage is senior and junior, like experienced and inexperienced. That's the best way to do it, to mimic real estate. Real estate can just split comp, right? Like that's clear. In mortgage, you have to say like it's about the work, and it's a senior person versus a junior person. It's about 60% of the work, 50% of the work. And so this company was coming into real estate meetings and saying, just sign up. If it's your lead, that counts as work, and we'll pay you. And that was getting other IMBs frustrated, obviously. But my point was, hold up. This whole idea of hiring a real estate agent and getting them licensed isn't the problem. The idea is fine, as long as you do the idea within licensing and RESPA rules and LO comp rules. As long as you manage to those three, you can do it. But everybody was like, well, it's not going to happen. It's like, well, let's see. We have to prove that, right? But if you actually did it, you could. Now, I've said this before. I say it all the time. We're not going to lower the price to the street, to the consumer, to the homeowner, if we can maintain 6 licensed professionals across the entire transaction.
Okay,
we're going to keep.
I agree with. Yeah.
If we're going to keep fully licensed experts at every stage for every piece, title, real estate, mortgage, legal, inspection, appraisal, all that stuff, we're never going to lower the price. That's easy. So either we don't and we stop promising to, or we do figure out a way to do dual licensing and let a platform compete that way and see. I don't know. But that would be my 2 cents.
HUD
2 years ago, and this gave way to the real estate agents, the REMLOs, right? Participating in it, because HUD, I forget the HUD letter, but HUD put out a HUD letter about 1.5 years ago outlining the ability for a mortgage company to have a duly licensed employee, which has been slow in innovation, but some companies have really taken a run with that. And other companies have put fairly onerous restrictions on it that really isn't going to have much impact. But one company that's done a good job with that is AnnieMac out of New Jersey. I mean, they've run with that where they've
good point.
So, but again, all of a sudden, things that we would have considered prohibited a realtor being on basically an individual being on both sides of the transaction, right?
Yeah.
I can now be the licensed realtor and the licensed loan officer and or a
Right.
business development professional on the mortgage side, helping facilitate that transaction, yielding me extra comp on both sides of that same transaction is shocking to me, but it's being done all over the country.
I don't know how many real estate agents want to become knowledgeable on handling and quarterbacking mortgage knowledge and information, but I'll bet you, without knowing, and I've never done this consumer research, but I'll bet you if we did the consumer research and you asked consumers, do you wish that one person could take you the whole way through? Do you wish your real estate agent could be your person the whole way through? I bet a lot of them would say yes. I don't want to be handed off. I'd prefer not to work with 4 people. And it's up to mortgage, I think, to show value that is strong enough. I know the top producers do, but I think the industry has to show value across to say, we need to convince the market of why it is so important. And I don't think we're doing it. I think we like to believe we're doing it. I think if we talk to consumers, I don't think we're doing as good a job convincing everybody there's enough value there to be handed off all the time. And I think that is a key challenge for those trade organizations that you mentioned. I'd love to hear them talking more about that rather than the regulatory stuff.
Now, from a legal standpoint, Jeremy, how is that going to change? Is that a true overhaul of Dodd-Frank to be able to require that, or is that just a CFPB? Well, whatever that means anymore.
What are you talking about? The CFPB's done, but continue. What are you talking about?
Well, yeah, I know, right? Well, there was an article yesterday about the CFPB resuming examinations, and then there was an announcement today that somebody, the head of the CFPB is saying he wants to kill it. So I'm like,
kill it, right? Yeah. So I think what you mean is like I don't actually think. I think it's a state issue by and large. I don't think the CFPB is going to take a position that you can't have multiple roles in the transaction, assuming that the state licensing allows for it. And then, I think there'd be some conflict of interest, like analysis. But guess what? Real estate agents already have a conflict of interest with their customer. It is the more that you buy the house for, the more I get paid. So a buyer's agent has an inherent conflict of interest already, and they've navigated that for 100 years. And they claim that their code of ethics means that they won't take advantage of it. Okay, so that's the answer, I guess. So unless you want to open up that can of worms, I think the CFPB would not step in. It would be a state issue.
Yeah. Well, the NAR ruling last year took that the exact opposite way, where agent comp is like basically, I don't want to say protected, but like separated from everything else now. So now you can't even really have that conversation, which maybe is a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, it's going to and this is where conservatives, to some degree, or those who are anti-CFPB, needs to be careful what you wish for, because it's going to be a shit show, if you will, to have 50 different perspectives as to whether or not somebody needs to be W-2 or 1099. Because it's certainly.
I do have a fun fact for you guys that I shared with a partner yesterday. Across all our partners, all 50 states, last year our average buy side commission was 272. This year it's 266. That's the difference from those millions of
0.06. 0.06 billions of dollars of legal fees.
6 bips.
Yeah, 6 bips. Hey, Rick, travel safe. I gotta go. I'm sorry. I gotta jump. Great to see you. I'm glad we did this. Talk to you guys.
Are you going to the NBA? Are you going to be there?
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll be there on Saturday night.
You guys at a NewZip's industry partner and friends dinner in Vegas.
All right.
On Monday night.
There you go.
See you guys soon.
See you guys later.